Ready to go. All right, good morning, everyone. We are back with Dr. G here for part 3 in our 3-part series on creating a culture of growth. And today we're talking about strategic planning. Welcome to everyone. We're happy to have you back. Just as a reminder or refresher, we started out with creating a strengths first culture using the Gallup Strength Assessment. Then from there, we moved on to the 5 essentials of a team. And now we're wrapping up with strategic planning, giving the foundation overview. So I'm going to turn things over to Dr. G, and we'll be open for some questions here at the end too. The questions probably pertain to your specific situation. So Scott, without further ado, welcome.
Great.
Thank you for being back with us.
Well, thank you, Rick. It's always a pleasure and honor to be here with you. So thank you very much, and with everyone else too. So again, after having built from our strengths, understanding our strengths, the strengths of our team, and then the 5 essentials, how to pull a team together, now you really have that solid foundation to begin to build the strategic plan and where we can go from here. If we're not a healthy team, we're not healthy individuals, we'll never move forward really in that strategic planning. So that's, again, a little bit of a reason for the order that we've put this in. So now strategic planning, foundational overview. So again, the goals for today really to take a look at how to complete a strategic plan and how this plan can guide like a GPS. Again, a GPS requires the fact that you need to know where you're going. It takes work and effort to enter the information. Same thing with a strategic plan. You start with the end in mind and you build some real foundational pieces and put some effort into it and see where that takes you as you go along. And actually, like a GPS too, every once in a while with the plan that we have, it's a living document. So you can make some changes, just like with GPS, where it says rerouting you because of a roadblock or because of an accident, or it will redirect you, saying that that familiar phrase of make a U-turn now, make a U-turn now. Same thing with your strategic plan. This living document that we're going to be talking about today, you have that ability to be nimble, to make those moves and make those changes, to be able to then, again, seize those opportunities, knock down those roadblocks, and continue to move forward. And then two, just looking at the goals of clarifying your goals, your roles and responsibilities, so you can have true alignment with your team, with your business, with your company. So part of the goal is to avoid surprises. So just a couple of things here, you can see that. If you have 2 beavers working on each side of the tree, and you see that statement there, someone's in for a big surprise. The other one up above, our rooms are full of cockroaches, the mattresses are moldy, the toilet clogged. That may be, but you've got all-inclusive books. So again, what are those meanings? What are the surprises that are there? So again, being prepared, the strategic plan helps to make sure that we don't have those surprises, we avoid those things, and we move forward together. All right, the roles for everyone today as we take a look at this. So again, you want to use your strengths for others, bring your perspectives to the and ideas and specifics to the table, focus with a bias towards action, engage in positive conflict. We talked about that the last time, MV squared plus I squared. So positive conflict is always about mission, vision, values, ideas, and issues. Build that vulnerability-based trust. Engage in that highest form of praise, again, that accountability piece, and commit to the team plan, the strategic plan that we're talking about today. The roles that we take as Partner2Learn in this process is we help facilitate, or guides on the side. We help bring focus, pull you back in, keep you away from too much granular pieces as you're putting together a plan, help you to continue to apply, repeat what we see and hear to make sure that you're really recording and getting into the plan what you want. And again, provide just that process along with resources to keep that a living process that continues forward for years to come. So again, realizing forward movement in your organization, here are some key concepts and resources. So first of all, we need to understand that context does matter. And I'm going to move this picture here so you can see that. And what does context really mean? Well, here's an example of context and how important it is. So if you read this, it says, I shoot people, then I take them into dark rooms and blow them up. Without proper context, that could be many number of things and maybe even pretty scary. But you put a little bit of context to it, put a camera by it, Now it begins to make sense. You shoot the picture, you take those pictures into the dark room and blow them up into life-size pictures that way. So again, context really does matter. So when you're looking at your company, when you're looking at your situation, context is very important. So you've got to look at and ask yourself, what's your context? Are you family owned, 40 years of experience, unique selling position? And again, really that idea, if you lack context, you are a commodity and people will just go to the lowest price. Rick, maybe you want to add something here to the context piece as you've seen it as you go out.
Well, the first thing I have to say is that your dark room analogy really ages you, Scott. So we all know you probably are north of 40 or 50 years old just with the dark room analogy. So if you're giving it, my suggestion is if you're giving it to the millennial audience, you may want to change that analogy because they'll go like, "What on earth are you talking about?"
Yeah, those digital cameras have changed everything, haven't they?
Changed
and
everything for
phones and
sure.
everything. Yes, I agree.
So context here in that we've talked about this. What's your elevator speech? What's your unique selling proposition? Too often in this business, we say, well, why should you, the question gets asked to us by our prospects, why should I go with you? And maybe it's a direct or indirect question. And it's answered with, well, we're a family-owned home builder with 40 years of experience that offers great quality and service. And so what they're thinking in the back of their mind is, so what? Everyone else that I talk to says the exact same thing. So from a strategic planning standpoint, context, you have to have that your unique differences, what's unique, special, and different about your company. And then the thing that I've seen as far as context, and this will be one of the questions we'll get to at the end, Scott, is that how do I carry that forward? So not only in my internal expectations with my employees, my trade partners, that sort of thing, but externally, how do I take that into my sales process, my design process, my fulfillment, where I'm building the home, where I'm warrantying the home, and make sure that that truly is a differentiator and it's not just lip service.
Oh, excellent, excellent, great points with that. And yes, the millennial audience may not understand that blowing the picture up. So, all right. So again, context though very important to be able to carry that through, carry it through the entire plan. And the planning process of POISED that we have that we'll get into in just a minute really helps to do that. All right. So not only the context. So again, that context piece of maybe that historical piece, but then why? What's our motivation? So again, continuing forward with context, what really motivates us? And we need this to be clear, to gain momentum, to pursue, again, the mission, the vision, the values. And really the question you want to be asking yourself here is always, what's our driving force? Why are we here? And that's where, again, you'll want to develop that purpose statement, purpose, passion, cause statement to put out there, to have for yourself, to live it throughout. Rick, thoughts on that or any comments there?
Well, from an EOS perspective, Entrepreneur Operating System, which I know you have a huge background in, these are my core values and probably my core purpose here, which turns into my driving force. Am I tracking correctly?
Absolutely, 100%. That is correct.
So as I understand my core values, I'm in the process right now of hiring somebody. And so I'm using my core values to as an overlay as I'm looking at hiring that person. And at the same time, looking at why are we doing what we're doing to make sure that that person is excited by that, right? That agrees with it, that latches on and wants to be part of the team or the purpose.
Absolutely. Those values, the driving force really acts as a funnel that takes everything through, gives you a very fine-tuned focus, and has to be a part of, again, all that you do. And when we get to the P for poised, the people portion, we'll hit that more about how important it is to have the right people.
And Dr. Scott, one thing I just point out here, and I'm sure you'll agree with it, is I was looking at a lender the other day that's a traction lender, and when they went through EOS and they developed their core values and their core purpose, they put them right on their website, on their About Us page. I thought, wow, that's a great idea. Is just, make it as transparent as possible so anyone and everyone that comes in contact with you via your website can understand what you're all about before they ever have a one word with you or one meeting or phone call.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great snapshot and picture to put out there in front of people, without a doubt. Put it right out in front. Excellent. Great.
What page should that go on?
Well, they had it on their homepage, But I would put it on the homepage, Yvonne, and I would also put it on your About Us page, you know, where your
Okay.
bios are, like for Meet the Team.
Yep. Okay.
Hello, Yvonne, welcome. I can't see as Rick's got the list, but
Yeah, we have a few other people on here as well, so no more swearing, Scott.
okay, will do. I'll keep it under control. Thank you.
And we are recording this. This is a reminder.
All right. So then we have the why, so that driving force, and then we go to the where. And again, in real estate with home sales and everything else, you've heard this phrase before: location, 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 and it really is important to understand that where am I located in this world? And again, that context of where plays into your strategic planning as to how you develop and what you do. Rick, you obviously deal with this all the time. Thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting in that when we're developing a website right now for a client, and the most important pages are the location pages, and when we're talking about optimizing that website to get found on Google, it's always optimizing by location. So I wanted to make sure that when we get to this slide and talk about context, in that your unique selling proposition, what makes you unique, special, and different, has to tie into where you are developing land, building homes, remodeling homes. That's what's going to really separate you. So Yvonne, I know you and Ted do a lot of work on acreage, and
Yes.
we have other clients that they're doing lakeshore. Some are doing urban infill. Some are building villas in specific areas. Kathleen, you guys have neighborhoods, you know, that really differentiate you from other builders because you have availability in those neighborhoods. So that's my note to anyone listening to this, is that make sure the context of your company, it follows right along with the locations that where you build. So that becomes part of your niche, part of your specialty.
Absolutely, and it ties wholeheartedly into how you market, how you do a lot of things that you'll build into that strategic plan. Excellent. Thoughts, comments, questions at this point? Anything that comes to mind for anyone that's either in the audience or Rick, things that you want to bring up to highlight before we go into the POISED model itself?
Yvonne or Kathleen, anything from you guys at this point?
No.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, I think I got, as far as my thoughts, we talked about it before, is just your location really needs to be part of your overall context and strategic plans here, or locations, because it really changes everything, how people look at you and the type of, and more importantly, the type of people you attract. Because if you try to be everything to everyone, you're going to get, yeah, lots of opportunities, but you're going to have very low conversions. So always go back into being that big fish in a small pond and using locations to really differentiate your offering.
Excellent. Very good. All right, we'll take a step forward here. So now, once again we are confident of these things, the what, the why, the where, now we take a look at the how, and that gets us into the strategic planning piece here. So the POISED model. So the key question you want to be asking yourself is, how do we gain the greatest possible forward movement in our organization? We adapt and apply some of the concepts and utilize some of the tools from POISED. And again, really, everyone that's out there, I've worked with the EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System model, the VTO, for over 10 years, have helped to implement that in over 400 different organizations. And it is a great model. And as we've gone along with my partners, we've discovered different things that maybe we could enhance and do better. And we've born out of that the POISED model that gets a little deeper in certain things and helps with a little specificity in certain areas that may be lacking in other models. So here we go. So what POISE stands for is people, octane, identify, strategy, the engine of profitability, and then do. So we'll go through each one of these and share a little bit here for what each of these stand for. And then at the end of this too, we will have time for questions and answers too. So people, it's got to start with good people. So right people, organization model, so that you're fitting. So as Rick was saying before, people need to be aligned with the mission, the vision, the values. We have designed a resource called Alignment Engagement Fit, AEF tool. And that just helps you to walk through a process. Are our people aligned? Are they truly engaged? And are they the right fit with where they are based upon their strengths, based upon what they're gifted to do? So it's a really nice piece of a tool, a simple one pager that I would use every year with performance reviews. I would use it in the hiring process, and it's a great resource that way. And again, just looking at your team and having balanced strengths, team first, the values clearly out there, capabilities and results, the trust and positive conflict, commitment and accountability, going back to the 5 essentials being driven throughout the organization, leaders that are chosen to drive strategy. Driving business solutions is another resource or tool that we've developed. It's a nice one-page document that helps you to really tackle issues, keep you focused on the issues, and walk away with solutions. And again, always focused on reality. See the world the way it is, as Jack Welch said there. So again, face reality, and then you can do something about it. So we really take a strong emphasis on people. Comments or thoughts or questions on people, anyone?
One question, Scott, the AEF tool, that alignment, engagement, and fit tool, was that part of the tools from last week's, the 5 essentials, or 2 weeks ago, the 5 essentials of a team?
Yes, it was in that packet.
Okay.
So you will find
so
it there.
then everyone listening here or watching this video, actually, there is a link to that in the second part, right below the video, where you can download that tool.
Excellent. All right. So when we go through this, there's a model too when we look at our people, the Yerkes-Dodson law. And what this model basically says is that you want to push your people to the optimal level of stress. But if you go beyond that, that becomes bad stress. Good stress stretches us, pushes us to exceed goals, pushes us to reach the maximum. Bad stress is when we push too hard, when we're working people 90 hours a week, when we're not taking those breaks and taking care of ourselves. So again, the whole idea behind this model is to basically, again, put out there that we want to take our people to that maximum level, so that optimum stress level, and to be able to determine that, and rather than taking them into that bad stress level when you're not focused on the right things and the right alignment. Rick, you maybe have some thoughts there to share.
Well, I think there's 2 ways to look at this now from the home building side of things. So let's look at the sales and marketing side of things, and let's look at the production side of things. The production side of things, when I get bad stress, typically is where I've got too many jobs, they're too spread out, and I'm working too many hours, and the mistakes are happening, things are falling through the cracks, schedules are not being met, and perhaps I'm getting an upset customer because of that. Now, on the sales and marketing side of thing, it's a little different. Where you get to that optimal stress level is where the salesperson is always uncomfortable. And so, Kathleen, I know you're listening right here. You got a sales team, but you never want your sales team to be comfortable. And what I mean by that is that they should always be pushing to get the next deal done. So there's a couple of ways to look at that. One is a compensation plan. Sometimes salespeople get overcompensated, and so what happens is that they get to a point of comfort in the year where they're comfortable based on the income they've made, but you as the owner of the builder are uncomfortable because you need to make that extra 2, 3, 4, 10 sales, maybe it is, in order to get into a really good area of profitability. So I've seen that happen where a salesperson hits that point of comfort, they shut down, they no longer push, they get comfortable. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is if they don't have enough business, then they usually get into the bad stress. So in other words, it's a lack of opportunities, and so they start thinking about, now, how am I going to make the car payment? How am I going to pay the mortgage? What's happening? My whatever savings is dwindling, and so that's where I see is bad stress. And so when a salesperson gets into that area, more often than not, they just panic and they get paralyzed. They just do not know what to do. So that's where it goes back to having a really good process and also a really good accountability chain within your management. So week in and week out, you're looking at their follow-up. You're looking at your sales milestones, the processes that you have put in place. Are they meeting or exceeding your metrics? So it doesn't matter if they didn't make a sale that week. You go back and look at what did they do leading up to that to make a sale, and are they always uncomfortable pushing for that next sale? So 2 different sides of the egg here when you get into the bad stress in this business.
Excellent, excellent. And this tool here just helps you to again, plan that out and make sure that you do have that as part of your strategic plan with the people
That,
section.
and I will say that is so, so true. Everything you just said there
Yep, you
makes
get to live that,
perfect sense.
Kathleen.
Every single day I am uncomfortable because they are comfortable.
Yeah, right. And yeah,
Many
and
times.
that's the opposite. We want you being comfortable because they are
They're
uncomfortable.
right, right.
Exactly. No, great, great. All right, so that takes us through the people portion of, again, the POISED model. So that would be built into the strategic plan, and a very simple process with the strategic plan, just like EOS, the VTO, is we're going to encourage you to select a long-term goal. You know, is it 10 years? Some organizations like 6 because of the cycle they're on, 5, whatever it would be. We can work with that. And we start with that end in mind. So if we want to be somewhere in 10 years, then we help build it backwards to where do we need to be in 3 years? Where do we need to be in 1 year? And what do we need to do in the next 90 days to be tracking on all of that? So again, built on that same premise that way. Now the O. So again, the O is for octane. So again, the octane that really pushes, gives the fuel to the organization again, is that alignment, that we're aligned with our mission, our vision, our values, that those are very clear, that everyone lives them and knows them. That we love developing and coaching. That means that we love working with our people. So as we're talking about the sales force or whatever it would be, that we love developing them, coaching them, taking them to that optimal stress level so that we get the highest production. Positive, thoughtful performance management. We avoid that untenable stress, again, that bad side of the stressors. Daily, we have good client contact. Continuous improvement is at the heart of what we do. CI there, continuous improvement, that we're always looking to learn, to grow. We want to be a learning organization. There's an author, David Senge, out there who wrote all about the learning organization, that it's a living organization that constantly adapts, meets the challenges, and moves forward. So that continuous improvement. And then always looking at employee engagement. That again, there's a focus on employee engagement. The higher the engagement of our employees, the more productive we will be. And then the DBS tool again, which is the driving business solutions tool, so that we're constantly tackling issues and coming up with solutions, that learning organization culture, and that we incorporate into our group some things called dynamic determination, which means that we're constantly flexing and determined for success, that we have intellectual flexibility, that we're able to, again, change with the changing times. Going back to my context picture, being able to change for millennials and meet the needs of the new generations. Courageous character, that we stand for who we are, that we live our values. And then having emotional maturity. The emotional maturity is through a model that we deal with called DICE. Again, it just is part of that E at the end, that emotional maturity, that allows us then to be able to make sure that we're in control of the emotions and the emotions aren't controlling us, and we're making rational decisions. And then we also talk about the 4 R's, which are roles, having clear roles, clear responsibilities, results-oriented, relationship-oriented. So again, we want to build that in. These are all things that will fuel the productivity and the, again, meeting and exceeding goals that we set. Then we go to I. So I for identify. So again, when you're looking at this model, you start with the people, then what's the fuel, the octane, and now we need to identify. So these are just simple, I simply identify and track clear priority metrics. Your dashboard, what might be your dashboard? Talking about what represents, what metrics do we need for our client, for quality, for learning, what are the results that we're looking for? That the senior leadership owns the key metrics, that they really own them, they know them, they're following up on them. Prioritize those DBS, driving business solution challenges, prioritize them, knock them out of the way, that they're tracked, they're owned, who is tackling those issues. The strategic priorities, led and tracked. Technology and tools used efficiently. And again, engagement and metrics and priorities at all levels. So everyone in the organization understands why these metrics are important and why we have the dashboard that we have. Rick, I know we had a little discussion on this prior. Anything to add to this or anything else up to this point?
Well, from an EOS perspective, so this is my data points, the metrics here. And so I have to make sure the senior level understands the importance of the data, and you look at those at your L10 meeting weekly. But then the same thing from sales, I'm going back to the sales perspective too, is that I need to make sure my salespeople on the accountability chart down the line also understand these are the minimum expectations. And so that's why I like to have a set of identified metrics that we expect you to do this much each week. Again, whether that's milestone tasks, sales milestones, which going down to the number of people you're engaging, follow-up calls, the number of prospects you're converting, and ultimately down to how many sales are you doing on a monthly basis. I think this is so important. And actually the whole system, we developed the functional sales system, is to give that data, to be able to measure. The whole idea came from when I was reviewing a production job at the end of the job, and I had an estimator there, and I had the job site superintendent. And so we look at what the estimate was, we looked at what the actual was for the job, we looked for variances, and then we try to figure out, why do we have these variances in the job? Do we make a mistake on the estimate? Was there a mistake made on site? Was there a cost overrun? In other words, we got a bad invoice from one of our trades. And I thought, why aren't we doing this on the front end too for sales and marketing? Is like having these specific metrics so we know how we did besides just not making the sale.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The clearer they are, the more understood they are, and the more upfront they are, the more likely you are to meet and exceed those.
And from the traction perspective, this is everyone has a number right here is what this slide tells me.
Yep, and everyone has to own that number. Correct.
Yep.
Correct. Excellent. Any other questions or thoughts from anyone else?
No.
All right, we go to S now, the strategy. Now here's where again, the rubber meets the pavement, so to say, that you have a clear market-backed win strategy. And this gets back to where we started with some of the context pieces to be able to communicate that unique value proposition. What makes you unique? Why would someone choose you over others? That again, this is leadership team led. It starts with the leadership team. Gina Wickman says, as good as your leadership team is, so goes the organization. Again, if your leadership team isn't focused and isn't together, the rest of the organization certainly will not be. That it's communicated appropriately at all levels, that everyone understands the plan, understands their role, how they fit, that all poised elements are in place. Again, the thoughtful organizational model, the POISED strategy guide, the tool that we would walk you through, helps you to set up, again, a very simple 2 to 3, maybe at the most 4-page plan, where the majority of that really is looking at, again, where do we need to be in 10, 3, 1, 90 days to be meeting those goals. And then the strategy must drive toward results and sustained elevated performance. So everything goes back to your strategy. So it all has to fit. Your values have to fit. The data, the dashboard have to fit. It all drives back from that strategic plan that is put into place. Then E, the engine of profitability. We certainly have to consider this and focusing on those critical financial elements. What is going to make us profitable? Again, building into the plan and looking at very specifically key aspects of what is that engine of profitability. And again, it's driven by the strategic plan. I cannot tell you, having worked with over 400 organizations through strategic planning, how often their financial model does not fit their strategy plan. And to have that alignment, and it happens so often, because they'll talk about, this is how we want to be as an organization, but then they put the money into everything but that. Mm-hmm. So if it's really important for you to get your brand out there, but you have very little in the marketing budget, we just have to make sure this all fits. Rick, does that make sense to you? Questions, thoughts there, or comments on what I said there?
It does. And look at this, the profitability. One of the shows I like to watch is on CNBC. It's called The Profit, and he says, well, any organization is about 3 things. It's about people, process, and profit. And I don't know if I agree with that, because here's what I found. I look at it. I look at, what do? We try to create a sustainable sales process. There's 3 components in that sustainable sale. Number 1 is that the process is replicatable and duplicatable at will, and every aspect is measured. Number 2 is the offering has maximum value perception. So that's, again, goes back to marketing. And number 3 is that you've got good to great profits. And what I have found is that if you have a healthy culture, you are operating well marketing. In other words, you've got a niche, you understand your target market, you're providing products and services that they want, and you are filtering out the people that you should not be selling to. But you have another way to do that, Scott, and everyone else, of course, is that if I want to say no to some people, it means I need to generate enough opportunities where I can say yes to the right people. Because if I don't generate enough opportunities, I'm dealing with the wrong people, and that's going to hit profits harder than anything else. If I find the right people, they see value in what we're doing, they like the culture of our organization, they agree and this is the one that I would replace profit with, is purpose. If people will latch onto a purpose, so they see the purpose in what you're doing and they want to be part of your organization. Ultimately, we're selling $200, $2 million homes, and somewhere in between. There's a very, very small percentage of people that will make a determination strictly on price. It almost always comes down to value perception. In other words, they got to feel like for the money they're giving and what you are giving them in return, what they're receiving in return, that money has to be equal to or less than what they feel they're getting in return. And that's where it comes down to, that engine of profitability. I think it all comes back to your culture and your purpose. Because if you're just out trying to make a buck, your customers will see through that, and your margins are going to struggle. That's my perception anyway, from the last 20 some years or 30 years of doing this.
No, absolutely, Rick. And that's really, again, that second bullet point there. The key aspects of the engine of profitability must be driven by your strategic plan, which means that it all has to be aligned and link with what really is your purpose statement and really what are your values. That drives this, and that results with that profitability. Now, again, there's other work that goes into that, making sure that you have the right pieces in place and that your financials link to that strategic plan to carry it out, and you'll see that success. So again, those wise investments, cost control, fueling growth, the monthly tracking, forward-looking financials. Don't be afraid to dream big, but dream big based upon that strategic plan. Again, going back to how do we accomplish this, and where can it all lead? Thanks, Rick. And anyone else, a thought there or a comment?
Makes perfect sense.
Yep, you've got to maintain that whole cash issue, or else it is for naught.
This is a cash intensive business for sure.
Yeah, and this portion of our planning process really helps you to focus in on that and to make sure that that's clearly out there. Excellent. All right. So then we get to the do. So the last piece, again, how do you do this? How do you really carry this out? So you do all this planning, you do these things, and in the EOS model, again, they have level 10 meetings. We have what are called fuel meetings. So again, just some slight differentiation on terminology and some slight different focuses taking us back to strengths. But here's the do part, is that to carry out the strategic plan, it needs to be in front of you daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. So again, you're going through that process. Daily, you're following those metrics. Weekly, you're having your meetings, your touch points. Monthly, you're looking at how is our progress going. Yearly, again, resetting those annual goals based upon leading us again to the 3-year, to the 10-year, whatever it might be. And that rhythm for customers, the EE, employee engagement, again, continuous improvement, and overall engagement by all. Accountability by all to maintain. So again, those weekly meetings, quarterly goal setting, annual and living strategic human resource planning. So often we leave the term off. We just do human resource planning. We don't do strategic. Strategic is a little bit different. And Rick has strategic number 1 in his strengths finder. So again, he really understands this, but is really making decisions that fit into your strategy. So if your strategy is going to be heavy on the sales side, are we really getting then the sales force that we need, whatever it might be? Again, the real strategic thinking behind the human resources. That the team's involved in the annual financial planning and strategic review so that they have ownership and buy-in to this. Maintaining clear, again, MV squared, the mission, the vision, the values. And the do, again, is just that do idea action plan, is going back, keeping that the 10-year, 3-year, 1-year, 90-day in front of everyone and really living that through. So the do is where again, you really push this forward. It becomes incredibly actionable and tractionable. Comments or thoughts there? Rick, anything to add there?
I don't think so. I think we're moving into our Q&A session now. Yeah, here we go. So we get asked ahead of time to send in your questions, and I think we have about 6 questions that we're going to go over here. They might be frequently asked, but let's go through those right now, Scott. And I think the first question is that, okay, where do I start? When it comes to culture change.
So yeah, where do you start? It is again really beginning with, as we've talked through this 3-part series, is really understanding your strengths, that strengths first mindset, the strengths of others on your team, having that solid team as a foundation, and then where you start is you begin to do this poised process, and you work through each component of it. It's not a long process. As a matter of fact, when we work with teams, we have a little bit of pre-work, we come on site, and within a 12-hour period, you're walking away with a really full developed plan that takes you forward. Again, if you're setting 10-year targets, it takes you forward for the next 10 years. I had the privilege of working with an organization 11 years ago now in Los Angeles. And they brought me out there as the first organization I ever worked with. We set 10-year targets, worked them backwards to 3 to 1 to 90. They called me back out again now 11 years later to help them reset because they actually accomplished those 10-year goals.
The BHAG.
That is correct. They accomplished those big hags, the big, hairy, audacious goal, as Jim Collins would call it. So what was so great with that is just to see their excitement that they accomplished it. The journey wasn't perfect. There were bumps and bruises along the way. They had to do some redirection, but they did accomplish them just because they set them and followed a process. So you start by implementing this POISE program, the VTO program, whatever it might be. And those are things that, again, we can help you with very much. Rick, anything to add there?
No, I think that leads us into the next question is what size staff, or is there a certain size staff or sales volume? Should you start setting up that strengths first culture, putting your leadership team together and having that strategic plan?
Great question. So I have worked with organizations that are as small as 2 and 3 team members to as big a company that was doing $450 million in revenue per year with this planning process with 800 employees. It really works for any size. And if you're looking for direction, focus, alignment, this process just is unbeatable. It is unbeatable. I just recently worked with a team of 23 to 25-year-olds. They didn't say anything about that picture slide. I'll have to ask them about that again. But,
they probably had no clue what you're talking about.
Might have just been being polite to me. But 23 to 25-year-olds starting up a nonprofit to work with inner city youth. And they're following this process. And it's so neat to hear from 25-year-old young people saying, we used to get together and meet, and we would never do anything, never accomplish anything. Now with this process, we have a focus and we're actually getting things done, and they're making a difference. So really, it could be as small a team as you want to really as large. We've worked with all of the above.
Next question.
Anything to add there, Rick, or thoughts?
No, I don't think so. No, I think you explained it very well. Really, the answer is any size. It's good. It's good to have it and to get it started. And I know that leadership team is the key component is to getting everybody on board, because that's going to filter down into your different departments on the accountability chart. But let's talk about roadblocks, because we have clients that are doing, Yvonne, you guys are starting to do EOS. I have other clients that are done EOS. I mean, this all sounds great, but then you go do it and you're like, okay, this is harder than we expected, or we didn't think we would deal with this issue, but it's come up. So some common roadblocks to implementing and carrying out culture changes. What are some of the things that you see, or that anyone listening to this should be aware of before they go into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the common roadblocks that fall into place, the biggest one, and we'll talk about this a little later, is when you do not have complete buy-in from your team. So if you have as Gallup puts it, the actively disengaged population, which are the saboteurs, that are the ones talking bad behind the scenes, they're talking bad about the company, They're just constantly saying this is a bad process. That is a huge roadblock, and you must overcome that. And we'll hit that a little later too, of how to deal with that. But again, one of the best ways to deal with that, is to really get them focused on their strengths. That'll help engage them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But again, that's a big roadblock. The second roadblock that most groups, companies face is just like with anything. You start it, there's initial excitement, this is gonna be great. You get into it, and then guess what? Life comes back into play. And all of a sudden, you revert back to the old ways because you know those best. And that's where we stand to walk with you. Our process is we want to be with you for the next year. So every quarter, we want to be with you to help you reset your quarterly goals. But after a year, it should be just running smoothly. But again, we have to stay the course and ride through those, because again, when you're walking on the water, so to say, and the waves start coming at you, don't focus on the waves. Keep your focus still on the whole process. And again, don't give up on it. So that's probably a really big piece, is that people go back to the familiar, and this then sits on the side of the road. So again, really living the process. And the best way to really overcome all the roadblocks is to have that weekly, if it's VTO level 10 meeting, if it's our POISE process, the fuel meeting, but having those weekly meetings, those weekly touch points, and keeping this plan in front of you keeps it moving forward. But the biggest roadblocks are those naysayers that just are continually sabotaging. And the next one is just reverting back to the old because it's familiar rather than staying the course.
So what I hear you saying is you're going to expect that you're going to have people that are not going to be doing the cheerleader thing and jumping up and down when you decide to make these implementations. And it was kind of funny, I was just chuckling because I was doing a training session on Monday with a sales team. And so this company, they're getting 100 to 150 leads a month. They're just inundated with leads, and they cannot get the salespeople to follow up. Kathleen, does this sound familiar for you?
I thought you were talking about me.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about you, a different client, but they cannot get the sales team to follow up. And so the owner of the company has been just diligent, and they're actually using EOS right now. And so they're going in, and then one of their measurables is, of course, their follow-up. And so he actually created a sales process for them, and he wants them to follow up 5 times. So the lead comes in, you're going to call, text, email 5 times for that particular lead. And so we have a software program where we track this, and we had just gone and done a major revision to our Ubix software for Customer 101, which is the dashboard for each and every customer. And I just chuckled because prior to us doing this major update, we took all sorts of feedback from salespeople. It's like, hey, how could we improve this? And Kathleen, you guys gave us a bunch of feedback, and a lot of other people did. And I think, Yvonne, you were part of that. So we launched this out. And so I'm talking to the sales team. And so now they're upset at the new look and feel of the dashboard, which we just had taken all of their feedback. They wanted to go back to the old method because why? They knew it. It was a change culture, and it just reminded me that no matter what your best intentions are, that human nature is that people are afraid of change, and they don't want to change, even if it's a better process or it's in this case a better layout for the software. So it's just good to know going into it that, look, just expect you're going to get that resistance, and once you get it, we'll deal with it, but that it's not going to all be rosy going forward. Because I know for myself, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of owners, we go through this and we get jazzed, and we're like, this is great, this is going to help me break through our glass ceiling and things we've been struggling with as a company. And then you go do it, and it's just like, well, how come everybody else isn't as excited as I am?
Great points. And so with it, everyone, just a little bit of a pattern that you can expect. Whenever you implement a new program or you bring in a new team member, you're going to go through basically 4 stages with this. And the first stage is always kind of it's the orientation stage is what it's called. Orientation. That's where it's kind of the honeymoon period, where everyone's kind of, optimistically excited. They think it's going to be great. And they feel like they're on board. So you have that orientation stage. And then every time that you implement these new things, or you have, again, a new team forming, you will then go through what is called the dissatisfaction period. And that's where you just have to ride that wave out. So every time you will go through that dissatisfaction where people say, well, I didn't think the meetings were going to be like this. Well, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Or I really didn't think it was going to be like this. And they're very dissatisfied at that point. But you have to ride that wave through, because when you have that orientation stage, the very beginning, productivity is in the middle, and again, morale is high with that. Then when you get to dissatisfaction, productivity drops, and again, morale drops, but you ride through that to the third stage, which is integration. Integration is where you now start making some slight tweaks, and that's the beauty of the POISE process, is that it's a living document, it's a living process. You can make some changes, accommodate what are good needs and what issues you might tackle that help you to make this even better. So that's the integration phase, where you start integrating now people's ideas, improving what you're doing, growing this whole process, leading to the final stage of productivity. And in the final stage of productivity, morale is now high, productivity is high, and you've hit that optimal point. But you've really got to ride through that. The integration, that kind of the orientation, the honeymoon stage leading to dissatisfaction, leading then to integration, where you start sharing and blending those ideas towards productivity, the final stage.
I think you just described somebody wanting to build a home. They come in for orientation and they're pretty excited and they got this idea of what they want to build, and then all of a sudden you start doing some preliminary pricing for them and they go like, oh, I didn't know it was going to cost this much. And then there's a fact where they start to swallow what it's going to cost or get their scope of work into realistic expectations, and then you finally move on to fulfillment, where you're building the home and you get into production where they're producing. But it's the dip. I mean, I'm a Seth Godin fan, and he called it the dip. Anytime you bring in somebody new, you start up here, it's high, and then you go down through a dip and then kind of come back up, and then you end up higher on the other side. But the problem is that a lot of companies, when they get into the valley, they just quit. They stop doing it because it's hard. And of course, what that does is it simply, you go right back to what you've always been doing, and none of the issues get solved.
100% spot on, correct.
So let's go. Oh, why don't you run through the next two questions, because we dealt with them here a little bit. So what if I do have that difficult convert or that bad apple who doesn't believe in the vision? And then secondly, how long did it get through this process and your experience, to go through that dip and get to the other side where you're producing and things are better and morale is high again?
Excellent. All right. So the first one, and I touched base on this a little bit, anytime that you have a difficult employee or convert to any situation, is you need to go back to the basics. So you go back to the strengths, help them to understand their strengths, how they fit, and where their role is. So going back to that. Then also you need to be looking at each person. When we talk about strengths are just one piece of the puzzle. You need to really be looking at your people and saying, are they healthy missionally? Are they aligned with our mission, our vision, our values? Do they understand them? So are they healthy missionally? Are they healthy emotionally? Can they handle the change? Or is emotion taking them over? Again, they have to be healthy emotionally to be able to move forward with this. And then also physically. Again, people need good sleep, exercise, nutrition. Those things, if they're not healthy physically, they are not going to be someone that can help push things forward. So again, it's really looking at those strengths and then looking at the base of your pyramid. Is the employee that I'm dealing with healthy, again, missionally, emotionally, physically? And once you address those issues, normally you can get that person converted. You can get that person moving forward. In the end, there's always going to be that hard decision to make with someone that just isn't going to be aligned with the mission, the vision, the values. It just isn't going to be that convert. And as Gino Wickman says in his book, Traction, he says, you do have to, at some point, be ready to just rip the Band-Aid off. And again, we don't advocate for that. We really think we have good methods to get people converted. And it usually does happen. Very rarely does it not, once they start to see the successes. But again, moving forward in that process. And then how long does this process take? The initial process with POISED and doing this is really just a little bit of pre-work of sending some challenges and opportunities so we can sort through that they're addressed in the plan. And then 12 hours on site, working through the plan to get you a fully developed plan. And then we encourage follow-up with teams every quarter to at least help you set your next quarter goals, leading towards the future goals. And also, again, when you start to implement that weekly meeting, whether it be level 10 with the EOS model or the fuel meeting, sitting in via phone or some other electronic means to walk you through that meeting process. It happens very quickly by the third, fourth meeting, people, because you always rate your meeting. You rate it on 1 to 10 each time so that you can self-correct. You want to at least achieve an 8 or better in every meeting. And usually by the third or fourth meeting, teams are beginning to average 8s and plus. And teams that we've worked with that switch to this fuel meeting process or level 10 meeting process never want to go back because they just find great success in those meetings.
So you said 3 or 4 meetings as far as process once you get it up and going. So if we're doing a weekly meeting, that's approximately a month. So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is after you've gone through the planning process and then start to implement things, you go through a month. After that 1 month, then you should start seeing some of the fruit of all your planning?
Absolutely, 100%, if not even sooner, quite honestly.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good. That's encouraging. That's good to know. Last question here, of course, is I'm an owner. I'm senior management. What is the primary role of ownership as you go through this, this process, whether it's the POISE process or EOS?
No, excellent. So the primary role of ownership, again, they have to be the ultimate cheerleader. They have to model this process. They have to live it, breathe it, eat it, sleep it, so to say, again, in front of everyone. They certainly can ask questions, raise issues, make strategic changes as they go along, but they really have to be the champion of it. If this is being championed, so to say, by a leader in the company, but not really totally reinforced by the owner or the primary accountability person there, it's not going to move forward. It is going to hit that roadblock and just stall out. Yep. That owner has to live it and really be that model of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Anytime I've worked with a client, and if the owner tries to take more of a hands-off approach and say, I'm going to put the sales manager in charge, or I'm going to put the GM in charge, but the owner is not involved, have their fingers in it and waving the pom-poms is why we're doing this. It's the people just were like, well, the boss is not into it, so I'm not either. And I just see you just lose momentum and then it dies. So I agree 100% is that you are the cheerleader. And I want to step back for a second, going back to how do we deal with difficult employee converts? So there are times where we have good long-term employees, we have good salespeople, but as you know, life is difficult. And like you said, am I emotionally healthy? Am I physically healthy? Well, sometimes I do get physically sick. Sometimes I get emotionally sick where I have, a marriage crisis, for instance, or, something going on with my kids, and there's all sorts of things to distract. So if I have somebody that I think is a valued employee, and maybe they're tenured, but perhaps they're on I want to set them aside for a leadership position, but they're just not emotionally and or physically healthy there. How do I go about and deal with that scenario? Because I think it's easy to see like, well, Jim or Sue or whatever, they sort of, they've been bothering me for a while. I don't know they're going to agree with this, and things don't go well there. It's easier to just move on from somebody like that, but it's a lot harder when you've got somebody that just has slipped. And Kathleen, I know you've dealt with this too with your sales team. Your sales team's been around a long time, and you've seen these people kind of ebb and flow. But yeah, how do I come alongside and help that person, maybe understanding that they can't take on these duties right now, but how long a leash do I give them before I say, look, you're just not going to work out for this position. I got to move you someplace else, or it's just not going to work out at all?
Great question, Rick. One of the things that we've done is we've incorporated a program with Partner2Learn. Really, the acronym is MEMS. So we take a team through missional, emotional, and then eat, move, sleep. And we help each person on the team to develop a one-page growth plan that, again, they would have an accountability partner, but a one-page growth plan that they share with their team, share with an accountability partner that, again, is taking them out 90 days and then they reset for the next 90 days goals in each of those categories. How can I become more missionally healthy, emotionally healthy, physically healthy? And what it does is it breaks down the barriers in a company. Because if you just go up to one of your employees and you say, hey, how you doing emotionally? They're going to look at you and say, what, is there a problem with me? What are you
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
What class did you go to?
That's right. But when we come in and do this, what it does is it sets up a common language and really builds that culture. And it allows for the open conversations. And going back to the 5 essentials of the team, it helps to really build that vulnerability-based trust that we can do this together. And so that's one way of doing it. You can provide coaching for individuals. If you believe that you have someone who's really a great employee, but just going through some difficult times in the areas of emotional or physical or even missional, doing some short-term coaching, different pieces like that can definitely be implemented and could be helpful.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I agree with that. I love that too. Is like when you go with that that process of where they sort of create their own personal. What did you call it? Was it a wellness plan?
Yeah, it's a personal growth plan.
Personal growth plan.
Yep.
I like that because now I take ownership. So it's not like, oh, the company's doing this big to do and yeah, I got to do this stuff because Kathleen or Yvonne told me and, I don't, hopefully this will be forgotten in a month or so. But now all of a sudden I am putting together my own plan. I take ownership of that. And now I've got, from an ownership or a management standpoint, I've got some accountability tools I can use with this person because it's their plan. And so they obviously want to see this succeed. So that's a very again, from a strategy standpoint, I like what you're doing there. Well, we are just about out of time. Yvonne, Kathleen, I know Runa, you're on as well, but any other questions that you have that haven't been addressed already?
Not questions, comments.
Please.
You both make this sound so easy. And quite honestly, it is overwhelming to get all this done. And I know you got to just take little steps at a time, and that's what I do. But I mean, it's all really amazing information.
Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I think the key I would say is just from my involvement is it's a team endeavor. You have to have that leadership team in place, and you do have to have an owner that is living, eating, sleeping, breathing it, and just to be patient with it,
Oh, yeah.
and give it time. But and you have done. I mean, and here's the other thing that I learned going through this is that too often as leaders we focus on the gap. In other words, oh, we're still so far away from our goal versus the gain. Every month we get a little bit closer to our goals. So I love setting up the goals on a 90-day basis. So from a rock standpoint with EOS, but I also like looking at just the accountability on a weekly basis. In other words, if I'm meeting with one of my direct reports, sales manager to a salesperson, and I can look at, here's the numbers that we're looking at each week. And when they've met or exceeded those numbers, man, I want to celebrate that gain. It's like, man, we went from this. So Kathleen, you guys, your team, I know you've been working very diligently, but you've had a great gain just looking
I
at your
love the
follow.
game. I love the game.
Yeah. And so your follow-up went from whatever it was, 30%, and now you're tracking 60, 70%. Yeah, we're not at 90% yet, but man, we've gained more than 50% of the gap there. We've narrowed that. So we got to celebrate those things as well. And salespeople, I've always said they respond to two things. They respond to commissions and they respond to recognition. So the more I can publicly recognize the gain in my team, my employees, I think the more buy-in that we'll get going forward. So thanks for bringing that up, Kathleen.
And
Thank
where
you.
this does become easier is partnering up with people like Rick with Partner2Learn to help you through the process. It is really challenging if you're just trying to do it internally.
Having a facilitator for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, Yvonne, you and
yourself.
Ted, I know, are using a facilitator for EOS. And I did have another client that was trying to put EOS in place without a facilitator. They crashed and burned. They went back and got a facilitator, and it's going, now they're actually getting it to get some traction.
It's why you hire a coach in whatever area of your life that you want to get better in, whether it's a personal trainer type of thing or whatever. Just that accountability helps so much.
Yep, absolutely. I always use the professional sports analogy. These guys are making tens and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, and each one of them has a coach. You know, they're the absolute elite, very, very best at whatever sport they're at, and they all have, you know, multiple coaches, and the best of them, of course, take coaching and always are pushing to excel and become better and better.
So that's one of the things when we implement it, or we're starting this, we ask our team members if any of them have ever been coached, and almost all of them said yes, and ask them why did they choose to use a coach, and you know, they make that comment of, well, I wouldn't be able to be where I knew I needed somebody to get me to the next level type of thing. So it was good for them to be able to say that and then say, well, this is similar. You know, this is one of the reasons we're doing this.
So, oh, I
we
like that. That's a great
analogy.
Again, going back to your past history to see that, well, you've done this before. This is just a different form of it. That's a great idea, Yvonne.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else, comments or questions here before we wrap?
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
And again, the additional tools that you see listed here are in the Team Essentials packet, and anything else I'll get to you too, Rick, that you might want for access for everyone.
Yep, and all of these are available in that download, that link right below the video from when we did the 5 Essentials of a Team.
Exactly. So again, we stand ready to serve in any way. So going back to the beginning, you have those one-on-one strengths finder coaching, then team building through strengths, and then the 5 essentials to put that into a package. And then we said here, we'll call it simple, but yet effective strategic planning in 12 hours. Again, with some follow-up after, of course, to keep it running. So thank you all for your time. Truly a pleasure to be here. And Rick, I always appreciate the opportunity to speak to your amazing clients, to the people that you're serving, and we stand ready to serve with you at any time. So thank you all for being here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Scott.
Bye-bye.
Great information here. We've got everything, all the videos recorded, and we got the downloads here for everybody too. And there's obviously our contact information. And if anybody needs assistance, we're ready to go. So Scott, you have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, thank you for all your great wisdom and insight on this process.
My pleasure. Thank you all. And again, I hope and know that you all will have great success. So stand ready to serve. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Bye, Scott.